This is the story about my failed trip to Full Sail University. This story takes place shortly after my separation from the Air Force. I separated from the Air Force 2 November 2016. I was set to start classes on the 14th of that same month. I was ecstatic. I already had an apartment lined up. All I had to do was find a way to get to Florida. At the time, I couldn't afford a U-Haul, but I was determined to make it, so I chose to drive. I packed as much as I could into my car and started to drive. I left at 3 a.m. for the 12-hour drive. About 13 and a half hours later, after a drive that felt like an eternity, I arrived 5 minutes before the apartment complex closed. I ran inside, sweating, in a frenzy, anxious to sign my lease. I started to go through the documents. Right before I signed, I see the rental price of $900. This was $300 more than what was agreed on. Not knowing what to do, I stayed in a hotel that night so I wouldn't be trapped in the rental agreement. I was told the manager would call me in the morning. The next morning finally arrived. After a very long, sleepless night, I was awakened by a call from the apartment complex. I answered. The manager asked what the problem was. I began to explain the situation, how this wasn't the original price agreed upon. There was a pause. The manager then told me she would never rent an apartment for that cheap and she would not lower the price. I was crushed, heartbroken. My dream of attending Full Sail was so close to coming true, but I had no choice but to turn back and go home. The drive seemed to take forever, longer than the first time. I soon arrived in my mother's house. I felt defeated, horrible, but I didn't let that stop me. I soon signed up for UMUC and began classes. Almost 2 years later, I will be graduating with my bachelor's in graphic communication. Hopefully my story inspires someone to never give up on their dreams, no matter what obstacles they face.